gonna show up. There you go right there. Okay. What's going on, everybody? What's going on? It's your man Chris Thorns here. We are here. Brother Jojo Brown just called in, y'all. He said he was waiting on me to call him, so I guess that's a mistake on my part because uh, I thought he was gonna call me, but he waiting on me to call him. But he is on the phone now, people. So let's have a show. Your Honor, thank you so much, man. How you doing this evening?
All right, all right. I'm doing fine.
All right,
We're
awesome.
just carrying on over here from a little something that went on early today.
Okay,
There's a number of brothers and I. We get together every Sunday. We do 2 or 3 hours of radio, and we try to spread the word. We had a
okay,
sister on today who
okay.
was from the Democratic Party Central Committee, but we weren't too happy with it. Not too happy at all. She was trying to tell us that we needed to change our definition so that manhood didn't have to include masculinity. So we wanted to know what the devil she meant by manhood, not including masculinity. So
Right.
she wanted to talk about all of the LGBT types that ought to be included in manhood. And we just said, well, all right, First Amendment, they have their rights, but that's not in our definition.
hmm Yeah, I kind of heard that a little bit of that show that you did. I would like to talk about that even more about the manhood thing. So, what is your take on everything? You do you feel like it's being stripped from us, or what do you think about that?
Well, I'm like this. I'm kind of hardcore on manhood and masculinity. It is first and foremost and paramount, and it's what makes humanity what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you have a limited pool of boys from which to develop tomorrow's men, and it takes a lot of work to turn a boy into a man
Absolutely.
and to keep him there.
Yes, sir.
So, seems that some people, the feminists, the LGBT crowd, etc., they want to absorb that pool of boys into something else other than masculine men. And as far as I'm concerned, yeah, they have got their rights to be whatever they want, but that doesn't mean you're a man because you exercise those rights to
Absolutely.
be what you want. Being a man is about duty, honor, and obligation, not what you want.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me ask you this,
Yes, sir.
Judge, and I'm glad you brought it up because I have a hard time understanding, what will make a man not comfortable in his skin that he does want to turn into a transgender or whatnot. Is it uh, peer pressure from the parenting or
I, I have I have no idea. I can't even conceptualize that. So I've heard people, I've worked around people, I've employed people that might be that way, but I don't understand it.
right?
I don't get it. It's
Needed,
like it does not compute.
right? Absolutely right. I don't understand it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I do have a call in number open if you want to call in to speak with him. Now, let me make it known. He said that he cannot give legal advice. So, you're looking for legal advice, he cannot do that. But anything you want to know about the law, he can speak on the law. Let me repeat that.
Yeah.
He cannot give legal advice. But if you want to know anything about the law, he can speak on the law. If you want to call in, the number's in the description box, and it tells you everything you need to do to call in. Even if you want to call in and say hey to him, you are more than welcome to say that to him. But once again, he cannot talk about no legal advice, but he can talk about the law. All right. So, and once again, thank you, Judge, for doing this show with me, man. I appreciate it. I'm not gonna keep you long, but I have another question, because I saw a tweet, and maybe you could elaborate on this even more. I saw a tweet, and I think the gentleman, his name is Sean King, and let me see if I could pull this up, because you said some on this post that caught my attention, and I want to know if you would elaborate more on how do you feel about this. So let me see if I can uh find it. Where is it? Where is it? Okay, here we go. So the tweet was he was saying that a 15-year-old by the name of Dayon Davis, an honor student, stole a pair of Jordans. They tried him as an adult, and they sentenced him to 5 years in adult prison plus 10 years on probation. And he said, "This is the new Jim Crow." And you responded to that, and you told him, you said, hey, wake up. This goes on day in and day out. A damn shame nobody pays attention to something like this hits social media. The so-called juvenile justice system needs scrutiny. Many of their injustices that are simply routine business. Maybe we need to get rid of the juvenile courts. And I like one thing you said in there. We don't pay attention to a
Yeah,
lot of stuff.
juvenile courts are obsolete. They no longer have serve a function. For the most part across the country, and especially here in Memphis, Shelby County, they become privatized and they're money-making propositions. To a great extent, they're corrupted, and their long-term goal is to create chaos in families to generate business for them that will raise money for their investors. Now, back to the other thing. At one point in Tennessee, halfway through the 10 years I was on the criminal bench, you had provisions in the law that if somebody was going to be tried as an adult and they were a juvenile, the criminal court judge would have a hearing to determine whether he would accept that person to be tried as an adult or send them back down to juvenile court. Well, what happened here is we had a real corrupt situation. We had a incompetent for a judge for 50 years, Kenneth Turner, who was a sixth grade dropout, and that was as far as he got in school. So he hired a bunch of lawyers to do what he couldn't do. Because the Supreme Court said he had insufficient knowledge of the law, and one of them was a Curtis Persons who eventually succeeded him, but was also acting not only as a referee, but as the special judge, and was on the state Senate's Judicial Committee as a state senator. So he was holding multiple roles down. And he passed a regulation, or got one passed, so that criminal court judges could no longer remand the juvenile back to be treated as a juvenile. So what they've done with that invariably is they run juveniles through over and over and over again. They have no concept. They're incompetent to determine what's going to be best to do something about rehabilitating that child. And when they've made all the money that they can make off of him, then they send him down to criminal court, because their whole system is set up basically only to handle the best behaved boys and send the worst behaving ones back to their mamas who can't control them. And then eventually send them to criminal court so they don't have to be bothered with them when they become too big a threat. Now, that's bad. But now, back on this thing, I went and did some little checking around on this case, and I kept getting conflicting data. The way it is carried on is he did basically something that was petty theft, and he's supposed to have gotten 5 years in as an adult, probation and some other stuff. But then I also started running into about the same number of counter stories where we were talking about there was a firearm involved, so it would have made an armed robbery. So instead of it being a travesty of really dumping on a 15-year-old, it was really slacking on him because it should have been an armed robbery charge. Now, I stopped at that point because I can see both sides of the issue, and I was not able to determine a set of facts that satisfied me comfortably as what was an accurate set of facts. We've got a lot of things going on. For example, Kim Kardashian, an amateur porn princess, meets with the president about prison reform, and her thing is there is a 62-year-old woman, a Memphis woman, who got a considerable amount of time in jail or in the penitentiary, and Kardashian says she's innocent and should be pardoned. But on the other hand, delving a little bit differently into it, I think I ran into the woman. I had 6 people on trial for first-degree murder. It was a major hit behind a drug cartel trying to wipe out a drug lord here in Memphis on behalf of another one. And there was somebody that kept coming in the middle who was making phone arrangements for massive shipments of cocaine that were being manufactured into crack. And it turns out this woman is the one that a lot of people were looking for. And it may be she didn't get enough time and definitely does not deserve a pardon. It's supposed to be a victimless offense. But in the woman's own words, she was bragging that she had been what she called, quote, a phone mule as the intermediary to set up transactions involving tons of cocaine from a Mexican drug cartel. Now, there was a certain somebody from Memphis that became number 3 man in Mexico's number 1 drug cartel that was responsible for running a Murder Incorporated, that was responsible for a lot of homicides around this area, a lot of crack being put out into the neighborhood, and a lot of dysfunction. So before anybody pardons anybody, somebody needs to make sure that this isn't, in fact, the missing intermediary that people were looking for.
Right.
I mean, it even got down to the point where there were 3 double homicides where rivals in another outfit got kidnapped with their mothers and then buried alive. You know, that's a little weird there, but it was the case. So we get a lot of stuff going on, and the bottom line is right now you can't trust the news. 2 cents
Hey, I know that's
worth
right,
of
brother.
trust.
I know that's right.
And they cherry pick stuff. They pick cases that they want the public to look at as, oh my God, how horrible. And then say, well, there are only a few hundred of them a week. Why'd they pick this one? Cherry pick that particular case.
Exactly.
Just was a boring, dull day news-wise, and this just happened to come across the wire. So you got a 23-year-old wrote up the copy for some talking head on one of the local or the national stations to read as it scrolled across the camera lens, and he could see through that reflecting screen. And it looked like he's talking to you on the camera, but he's reading something a 23-year-old put up there, and nobody's qualified for being a real reporter to go out and get to the bottom of anything. And most of them are too damn ignorant and too undereducated and too ill-advised about reality to just do a damn thing.
Right.
Now, I met Walter Cronkite and Ed Bradley and that bunch, and it was like walking encyclopedias. This bunch of goofballs you've got right now is more into their makeup shade than anything else.
Right. Judge, they got this thing, I don't know if it hit Memphis yet, but I seen it on the news not too long ago that they got a project going on where a lot of women are getting together to release mothers from jail. And I think it was around Mother's Day. I don't know if they still got it going on.
Say again.
Now.
I got some static there. Can you say that again?
Okay. They had a project going on. I don't know if it's still going on now, but I know around Mother's Day, a group of women had got together and they were saying, they trying to put a thing together where they can relieve mothers that's in prison. Because I guess for some reason they don't believe mothers should be in prison for Mother's Day. I'm not sure if you heard of that or not.
Well, let me put it this way. There are people in the penitentiaries that don't belong there, but more belong there than don't. You know, with the crimes that we get put in the penitentiary for aren't exactly going out playing Robin Hood. You're ripping off your neighbor, your relatives, your co-workers. You're making your neighborhood generally a miserable place to be, filled with chaos and unnecessary danger. The truth of the matter is somewhere around 97.6.8% of the people in the penitentiaries, including the women, pled guilty. They didn't get found guilty by a jury. Just about 2% of the inmates in a pen are there because the jury found them guilty.
Yeah.
And somewhere around 85%, it's over that way for years and years, confessed. And what always used to get me is I would have in my courtroom somebody that's trying to front off about being an OG, and he's got all this posse in there trying to back him up and just throwing signs at each other.
Right.
And then we retired at Chambers to look at a video of him giving the confession. He's going, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. God's running out his nose. Punk out, you can be little punk ass. And he's got crying, he is running down, And then you go back out and you look at him in the courtroom. Yeah, man, it's on recess. Yeah, man, it's all down, man. Say, you punk. All you had to do, they wouldn't have had a case on your punk behind if you just say, I take the Fifth Amendment. You up in there crying for your mama and snot
there you
running
go.
all down
There you
your
go.
phone.
Exactly. And
having to pass this damn fool some paper towels right the snot off the front of his, whatever that smock is they put on.
Preach, Judge, preach. Preach. But you know what, Judge, in my opinion, and I'm pretty much sure you agree with me, in my opinion, a lot of guys who like that because they ain't had no positive male role model in their house, so they've been under mama so long and mama pacify them. Because I'm pretty much sure you heard that a lot. No matter how old you get, you still my baby. Yeah, that's still your baby, but that's a grown-ass man. How you going to accomplish anything? You constantly winging him. I don't get that.
See, and like I used to have the other thing that I really got off on, really didn't like, was you're a real man. You have 46 children outside. How many you pay child support? I don't need to, Your Honor.
Yes.
My women take care of them for me. That ain't no man, you little punk.
Thank you.
What's the matter?
Thank you.
You a punk, so you trying to prove you can be a breeding machine? That ain't being a man.
Thank you.
Or how you support yourself?
No, it's not, sir.
Absolutely.
If the court was disposed to put you on probation, how would you support yourself? I don't see it from this report. Yo, Your Honor, I got 4 ladies take care of me. 2 got good JOBs. 1 get a crazy chick. The other one get AFDC. They take good care of me. Well, what do you do?
Thank
I
you.
smooth them out. What do you do?
Nothing.
Thank you.
That doesn't sound like a man. What are you, a gigolo or something?
Thank you. See,
That's what it sounds like.
I have no idea.
What are they doing? You a drone? What is your word? Tell me something. You ignorant fool. Being all over the world and been learning how to handle where their environments are, put something in their heads. You have nothing in there. You ain't even a good gangster because your women do it for you.
Exactly. I don't know. I don't know.
Your women and your mama.
I don't know where they came from with men think that makes them a real man just because how many females they poke. I mean, how's that make you a real man? Just like you said, though, you ain't got no job or you barely making ends meet and your money going straight to them. How they make you a real man? Who taught you that hitting multiple females that makes you a real man? I don't get the mindset these folks.
And then what gives me, you see them in court trying to back this fool up, and
right.
You can't say it on the record, but you thinking, man, at least can you deal with a pretty looking woman? All them are ugly. Shoot, who cares? What's wrong? What's the matter with you?
I guess they think any woman is better than a good woman, Judge.
We got somebody on the phone line, Joe. We actually had 2 people. I don't know. Whoever dropped off, you want to call back in, call back in. The line is open. But anyway, though, let me go. Let's see. This is like from my hometown. What's up, West Tennessee?
Hey, my name's Dylan. I'm actually, I stay right here in Memphis in Cordova, Shelby County. So I just want to say, Judge, I remember.
Hold on, brother. What's your name? What's your name? You ain't got to give your real name, but just make up a name. What's your name, brother?
My name's Dylan.
Dylan?
Dylan, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember, I'm 24 now, but I remember, growing up being a little one, watching it on the TV, and it was always good stuff. So I just want to say that, to speak with you, to be honest. But, I was listening earlier, just about the fact about manhood and masculinity.
Hey, do you got something playing in the background, brother? You got something playing in the background? Because I'm hearing a lot of feedback.
I'm on the radio, sir. I'm on the radio.
I don't have
okay.
anything going on. Sorry. No, not just playing in my background, man. So, basically, I heard, about the masculinity and manhood thing, about the LGBTQ or whatever. But I don't think that you have to give up your masculinity or your manhood, to be okay with, however someone else wants to live their life, But I don't think that, you have to raise your child be like that. I think it comes from childhood, in my opinion. And it starts with, I wouldn't say it starts with openness, but I think it's a good and a bad of being allowed to, have access to that environment, to be introduced to it so young. But at the same time, I think that, it's a societal norm that we grow up as a man, and the culture affects as a man. And I think that, again, our ability to be lax about that has given us freedom to explore those stuff, especially in 2018. But I guess the point I'm making is don't see where you have to sacrifice, the standard traditions of masculinity while, and not being able to be open, accepting of, others for sex or sexual orientation.
Okay, somebody got a TV running or something.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, whoever got the TV or radio running, man, you need to put it on mute or something.
I really couldn't hear what he was saying.
Yeah, me either. You got a TV or radio or something playing in the background, brother?
No, I don't have TV on. Can you hear me now?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, it look like somebody. It might be my brother, DJ C. Go ahead. I think I hear you now. Go ahead, brother, but speak a little louder.
No, I don't have nothing on.
Sorry about that.
Okay, go ahead. Now speak a little louder. Speak a little louder.
I guess, I was thinking, to you earlier, talk about the masculinity and manhood, as far as the LGBT. And while I agree, that society, the societal norms, since we're so open and involved with the openness, sexual orientation, your gender, sexual, whatever they want to call it these days. I don't see where, we have to sacrifice our manhood or masculinity, and while we can still be okay and accepting of others, whatever their sexual orientation is, and I don't think it's a wrong thing. I don't think she was correct when she says that, we have to give up, the tradition of, masculinity. It's not about being, androgynous or anything like that. We can still be, take care of our families and provide for them and stuff like that. And we don't have to give that up, just to be accepting of others. So I guess, I'm a little confused on where that comes from.
That comes from some people that don't like manhood.
Yeah.
We are their enemy.
I mean,
that's not the right thing. See, there is a person, a late individual by the name of Joseph Goebbels, minister of propaganda for the Nazis. He said, you tell a lie one time, it's a lie. You tell it 1,000 times, it becomes true. Tell a lie or anything long enough and loud enough, and you can get anybody to believe it. So you have people who have an interest in destroying manhood or masculinity, and they've been putting out a lie for the longest, and they are really going flat out right now to push it and trying to change the paradigm of what manhood and masculinity consist of. I just had a debate today, somebody that came on, and it was, you don't have to have masculinity and manhood, and that's an oxymoron. You can't have manhood without masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
See, all those other things, what do they call it, that ugly ad against Botox? Caitlyn, Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah.
He can be what he wants to be, but that ain't a man. And it ain't a woman either. As far as I'm concerned, it's a thing. He's entitled to be a thing, but, people deal with all sorts of things about his self-hate. So it can go over that way, and I wish these women that don't like men anyway would wear a discreet sign saying we don't like men, so you can know, well, don't pay any attention to them.
I know that's
all
right.
of these other women,
Amen.
they're trying to be attractive.
Amen.
They want you to pay attention. You won't get turned off to them by dealing with something that's a strange beast over here that doesn't like the opposite sex. That's their right not to. But let us know. Come on out the closets. That's the way the thing is. So we don't have to play around and worrying about offending one of them. Because if you look cross-eyed at one of them, they want to get upset about it.
Exactly.
Right.
Call the law.
Exactly.
See, my confusion about that is, and I understand, I guess some of them are under the stigmata that we oppress, people different from us as men, And while this may be the true over, the course of the history, and that's the same for all types of issues, and not just sexual orientation, but going back, there was, race and then, women's suffrage, so all types of things. And so I understand that, but I don't understand, in my mind, I don't have to give up my masculinity or my manhood to be accepting of people, transgendered or whatever else they may be. And I don't understand why I have to sacrifice or remove that from myself in order to be accepting of them. So that's my confusion. I don't understand why my manhood, is a problem. When I don't see them as a problem.
It isn't the problem. They are the problem, not you.
Yeah.
See, all the time, historically, prehistorically, from a point where we weren't even fully people, this has been the paradigm, and they want to change it. And, 45 years after you've got 45,000 going on 450,000 years, and they want to change it. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
They got control of the media, and they're trying to propagandize that what they do is all right. Technically, under the First Amendment, it is. But just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
And just like somebody said in the chat room, he said it all boils down to intentions versus attention. I like that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is what they want to get away with. See, being a man has as a primary condition, you have to be brave and courageous. You have to be willing to let it all hang out and get out on, put it out on the line and be willing to die for cause, country, people, or whatever it may be. So
right.
They want to get away from that and get all kinds of little excuses because they're cowards. See, so
I have to agree.
See, when we were hunters, and that was something we were hunting for the summer barbecue that night Stomp was flat, you had to depend upon your fellow hunters to be courageous and brave and have your back. So everybody was dependent upon everybody to have their back. So it became part of the programming on all boys that they were supposed to be brave and courageous. And one of the lowest things you could be was a coward. But you see, there were a whole lot of people that got scared half to death by the thought of that, let alone the performance. So they didn't like it. So they're punks, and they just come up with, okay, my God, we control the media. Let's change this paradigm. You don't have to be brave. So when they go play coward, they can be their yellow selves and still try to hold their heads up. But it doesn't work that way.
So
they're drunk.
Would you consider? So would you consider a manhood, all of those traits of manhood, a threat to their very existence, or the idea, the ideology, so to say?
Well, it's still about courage and bravery.
Yeah.
It's still about dealing with your obligations, responsibility, and your accountability for doing that. It's like
right.
Masculinity is like humanity's lifeboat. Most of the time, the lifeboat's there on the ship. You don't need it, but when you got a Titanic situation, you need it real badly.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think those are traits that
hey,
everyone
favor,
should
brother,
possess,
Dylan,
not just men.
Do me a favor, brother. Do me a favor. Stay on the line.
Yes, sir.
Stay on the line. I'm gonna open your mic back up since you're in Memphis. You know what I'm saying? I'll let you stay on. You can host the show with us, brother. But I got somebody else.
Dave, would you bring some blue cheese with?
Yeah, I got somebody else who need to come
Hey,
in.
no problem.
I got somebody who need to come in, so I'm gonna put you on mute. I'm gonna put you on mute real quick, and I'm gonna bring you back in, brother.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Southwest Ohio, what's going on?
Hi, Chris. This is Becky Dean.
Hey, Becky, how you doing?
It is
Doing real
Becky Dan.
good.
Good. Go ahead. What you got? What you got
Mad
to say, dude?
respect, Judge Joe Brown. Mad respect, sir. I have a question for you, and it's more on a lighter level than what we've talked so far. Say you've gotten a protection order against someone, and they've objected to that protection order. Now you've won at the highest level, but they're objecting to that. What is needed for them to carry on the case? Like, is it? I know one of them's new evidence.
Well, have you had a hearing on this thing, the matter?
We had hearings for a year, and I received the protection order.
So you got the protection or order of protection?
Correct. And within days, that was objected to.
Well, what do you mean it was objected to?
An attorney was hired, and they requested a hearing.
All right, you had
to our courts and objected to the magistrate's ruling.
Magistrate?
Yes, it was a magistrate, and then the next time it'll be in front of a judge.
What court was it in?
Ohio courts.
Ohio. I can't speak with any authority on Ohio law, but usually you have still the fundamental requirements of due process. You have to have a due process hearing, which means people have a right to be heard when anything is going to be made a permanent situation rather than just a temporary injunction or a temporary restraining order. So when you're telling me somebody objects, I'm not clear on who's objecting, your side or the other side. So you have a right to counsel, they have a right to counsel, and they can fight it out in front of whatever the particular authority is where these things will be heard in your state.
Okay. Okay, correct. So, yeah, there's still another hearing in place.
All right.
Now.
Well, you might
So
want
I
to
was
get
just kind of, that was one of my questions, was kind of like I knew there had to be either new evidence or more evidence, to carry that on, because I'd already won, and now they're objecting to that winning. I wasn't sure if it was at the magistrate's level where they were talking just to them or if I was involved in it, and I am.
Well, see, it depends on what the basis of it for. See, there are two concepts here. One is personal, and one is the interest of the state. If you're talking about somebody doing something against the public peace, dignity, and order of the state, then it has a right as an interested third party to intervene in this and take what steps are necessary to preserve public peace, dignity, and order. If it's you that is aggrieved, then of course you have your own redress so that your safety, peace of mind, or your dignity is preserved. So I would suggest that you get yourself a good lawyer.
Okay. And then just in general, what should we, the people, do with all of the corruption and overreach that we're seeing within our systems? What is your suggestion for we, the people?
Well, the basic one is be involved. And one of the things you ought to do is apprise yourself of the candidates who are running for judge or judicial positions, because they are the most important positions on the ballot. The mayor can't lock you up. He can't let you out, can't set bond, can't set support. He can't grant a restraining order. Judges can. They can't grant divorces. They can't do a whole lot of other things. But you see, the judges can. So you need to pay attention to that. And what the judges do pretty much determines the tone of what's going on in a given community. There's a great opportunity to do what's called social engineering. Overreaching, it depends on what you're talking about. There's a misconception that some people pass around. The very first case the United States Supreme Court ever heard 230-some years ago, 40 years ago, was what is the common law? Their ruling is the common law is, quote, that body of judge-made law based on tradition, precedent, and the evolving conditions of society. That is a quote. So you notice the evolving conditions of society. So some of the people on the far right that want to talk about the law should be stagnant are dead wrong. And then what about the judge-made law? Well, as the Supreme Court said, all law in the United States is judge-made law until it is superseded by legislative statute, by it, regulation, protocol, or ordinance.
Yes, I understand. And I think we should start educating ourselves and getting in at the local level so that we can voice our opinions and because we can't just sit back and complain about it and ask for change without action.
I'll tell you something unusual. Most every lawyer has had to study constitutional law, but it works out in less than 25% of actually, and including the judges too, of only around 25% of that are read the Constitution. I would suggest that you read it. It's only like 10 or 12 pages long, depending upon the format.
Oh, I'm one of them, Judge, that I hand out pocket constitutions. I know, like, that's why I believe in even a phone call to a school if or something can make a difference sometimes. And
okay, here's
I believe in
homework
just
assignment
thing
for
to
you.
help. Yes.
Here's a homework assignment for you. Try and find the basis for the quote war on terror.
Okay.
But I would suggest that what you might look at, Article 1, Section 8, where they talk about piracy.
Yes.
And the obligation of the naval forces to pursue, eradicate, and suppress piracy wherever found in the world. Read the part that says that the supreme law of the land shall consist of the Constitution, such laws passed by Congress that are promulgated to give effect to the Constitution, and those treaties ratified by the Senate, which become part of the supreme law that have to be enforced not only on the federal level but the local level. But that will.
So are you getting at like martial law?
Hijacking airplanes has been declared to be piracy by treaty. So if there is a constitutional duty of the armed forces to suppress piracy, then they have a duty to suppress what you saw 911 when 4 airplanes got hijacked.
Yep.
But you never hear anybody say that. They talk about the international war on terror, etc., terror, and it's supposed to be the land of the free, home of the brave. So it's a little weird, but
Amen. Wow.
It is what it is.
Your depth of knowledge is unreal. It's been a pleasure. I know
Thank
Chris
you.
has other people wanting to ask you questions, so I'm going to bow out. But thank you very much, and again, mad respect to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Chris.
Becky. Thank you so much. Not a problem. Not a problem.
All right, bye.
Not a problem. Not a problem at all. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to call in and talk with me or my brother DJ C and Judge Joe Brown, the numbers in the description box. You can call in and talk about what we talking about.
You want to get in on this? It's local. Members? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just let you know. Y'all want to call in and talk to the judge, the number is in the description box. Call in. Speak on what we're talking about, or you got something you want to ask him, come on in and ask him. Again, let me repeat again. He cannot give legal advice. He can only speak on the law. So let's make that clear. He cannot give legal advice. He can only speak on the law. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on the line now with Brother Judge Joe Brown. Okay, so I'm going to bring this brother back in from Memphis. Memphis up in this thing. You still there, Dylan?
I'm here.
West Tennessee, you still there, Dylan? You still there? Okay.
I just heard him a few seconds ago.
I haven't heard you still.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I was just
there you
outside.
go. There you go, brother. Yeah, go ahead. I unmuted you again. You got anything else you want to say to Judge Joe? You got some question to ask him? Go right on ahead, brother. You're the only one on the line right now, unless other people want to call in. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Take your time.
There's a lot of things, that I love to talk about. I've only been here in Memphis for maybe just a little bit over a year, about a year and a half.
How do you like
it? I find it.
How do you like it?
I love it.
Okay.
Gotta say, I love the people here. I think that Memphis is one of the more forward-thinking, in Tennessee, and I've commended on that. I really appreciate that fact. There was just the Martin Luther King Jr. Walk going on. I think that was like almost a month ago, a little over a month. And that made me happy to see, all the progression. And I know there's still problems, in the world, especially still oppression and prejudice and systematic racism, But I think, and I hope every day we're getting closer to finding some resolution to that, So, I really like it here. But since I brought up the topic, in my mind, I never, being a Caucasian male myself, I was raised to be a very open, accepting. I was raised in an accepting family. So I never really understood the prejudice against color. And I see all the movements about people saying they're colorblind. They don't see color, and I don't think that's the right way to see it. It's not that it should be color specifically, but we should acknowledge the oppression and prejudice, from one race to another. And if we have the power or the ability to make an impact or change on that, we should. We should be active, proactive on that. And so that's the way I've always been raised, But I never understood really why racism is still a thing, why it still exists, I just can't understand it. And maybe you or somebody else maybe has some idea or some thoughts on that.
I've got some ideas. Instead of try to answer your question, one of the problems is that at one point in this country's history, the fundamental wealth or the balance of the wealth in the country and its agrarian side of its economy was all hooked up with slavery. Slavery was not just ordinary slavery historically, but it was a chattel slavery, which means that slaves were considered subhuman and they were considered as cattle. Chattel is the French root of cattle. And the basis of it being on ready identification for someone's point of origin, African, in America, it became associated with the color black, various shades thereof. For the most part, to ensure that slavery worked, it was determined through the status of the mother, not the status of the father. And for the most part, most of the states of the Confederacy and those states in the Union before the Civil War that did have legal slavery basically said one known drop is sufficient to get you declared slavery. Now, there is about a 40-year period in there that ended in the very early 1930s in all of the former states in the Confederacies, wherein there were laws in each state that said a person could be declared to be Caucasian if they had no more than a certain percentage of colored ancestry and looked white to the satisfaction of some judge or chancellor. That was based on the fact that a number of very rich former Southern planters had lost all of their legitimate children in the Civil War, and the only descendants they had were children they had by slaves. Now, if they didn't leave it to the children of the slaves, then it would do what they call escheat, E-S-C-H-E-A-T, to the state. In other words, the state would get all the wealth, so they passed some laws so that their half-breed children that they had with mulatto or octroon slave, fancy girls, could be declared white. Now, that changed somewhere in the early 30s for most of the southern states, so it went back to any known colored ancestry will require that the person be considered colored. So that's a reality. So that's why it does make a difference, is because former status as chattel property was dependent upon one's racial status. They had involuntary servitude, yes, but that was indentured servitude, and that is ended. Interestingly enough, Dick Cheney, Warren Buffett, Barack Obama, and Brad Pitt have a common French ancestor who was an indentured servant. He was a Protestant, and he came over. So all of those people have a common ancestor. So you have that kind of situation, and it is what it is. But there are a lot of people passing for white, and a lot of people that probably are passing for black that have more white in them than black. But it's more a cultural identification these days than anything else. And there's what I call the one block rule. What you look like one block away. Because we have a need right now for something to diffuse a whole lot of interpersonal hostility and aggression brought about by the fact that our economy, again, relying on a lie told long enough and loud enough, is supposed to be so sacredly in the hands of private enterprise that nobody's making an adjustment for what industrial technology and computerization has done to the employability of the average somebody that would be a blue-collar worker. So you don't want Timothy McVeigh types acting in conspiracy with others to use common fertilizer to blow up a courthouse in Oklahoma City.
Yes, sir.
So you do something to diffuse that, and you've got the criminal justice system, not so much to control crime these days, but as a device to control surplus labor. The situation being that the number of your would-be workers are surplus to job requirements.
Wow.
Brother from Memphis, give me just a minute. Brother Smooth, you haven't had a chance to say anything, man. We got Judge Joe Brown, man. I got to give you a voice, man. You my dude, you my host, man. You got anything you want to say to the legendary Joe Brown? You got anything you want to say to him?
Yeah, absolutely. Just before I even start, just saying thank you, sir, for taking the time to come on to the show tonight. But there's one question that I've had that I was thinking of, was on an article that came, I believe, to like Chris's timeline and mine as well. It was talking about a man's parental rights. And in this case, it was infidelity with a woman that he supposedly thought that he wanted to marry. But yet she was already married. But yet a judge ruled that he's not the biological father. But yet, the mother of the child supposedly said that he's not going to have any of his rights in this case. Now, for you, it was like, in your opinion, how should that really be? Like, should the actual biological father fight this case in court, because knowing that he is the biological father, although he was born out of infidelity? That's what I was wanting to know.
Well, it depends on the circumstances of the individual case. Oftentimes, what you've got is a child that's not getting what he or she gets because there's no masculine input into the raising of that child.
Yes, sir.
You can bring the biological father in as somebody that just would be willing to stand in that capacity, then that's fine, because girls need it too. One of the things that people don't understand is how badly girls need a father around. You see, a girl that has a father around, she says, "Daddy, could I have $20, please? Baby, I just gave you 10 this morning. Daddy, please." Bring girl out. We're going to the mall. Baby, look here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Here's 40. Get out of my face. Don't bother me the rest of the week. Thank you, Daddy. Now, since you know how to interact with men when she grows up, you get somebody with no daddy around, she's going to act a damn fool, put one hand on one hip, waggle her head, say, "Let me tell you what you gonna do," and get nowhere at all except give everybody involved a headache.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And I'm glad he brought that up, Your Honor, because I'm going to do a show about that, y'all, because to me, personally, I think that's quite disgusting. This woman, was supposed to be married and messing with this man out the side, but then at the same time, I can't just put everything on her because this fool knew that she was married. Now, why he chose to get her pregnant, I have no idea. But I
Yeah,
never,
he's not off the hook.
right, I never heard of a law that says that she can decide who raised that child. And she chose her husband to raise that child. Now he trying to fight to be a father to their child, but they telling him pretty much it ain't happening. So I really don't get that, man. I think that's awful. That is awful.
Yeah, I think that is too, because if you really think about it, it's like, yes, he was born or she was born out of infidelity, but yeah, it's just all you have to do was say, oh, I don't want him to be the father of the child, knowing full well that you cheated on your own husband,
Mm-hmm.
but yet you still have this say so. Go ahead, Your Honor. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, sir.
My opinion on that is they need to expand this concept of what they came up with called intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
It developed when some women, not married, decided that they wanted to be mothers and they wanted to get artificially inseminated. So they go to a fertility clinic and get impregnated by sperm from a sperm donor. So sometimes they would try to come back and collect child support from the sperm donor who stole the sperm and doesn't know the woman. So they came up with the concept that's called intentionality. In other words, the man shouldn't be held to the requirements of child support and anything else if there was no intentionality of him being the father of a child with this particular woman. Now, I say this in the context of from 50, 55 years ago, women decided to get sexually active after they got the pill. And nobody was getting pregnant. That was just like, wow, what's wrong with you? Spastic or something? What happened? But nowadays, I think last count there's 62 kinds of birth control out there, and people won't use it. So some female that has no connection with a guy, she goes ahead and she decides she wants to have a baby because she wants to play mama without having a husband. I think they need to expand this thing of intentionality to enclose that. Was it the guy's intention to get this woman pregnant? And if it wasn't, then she's cut off just like if she went to a sperm bank.
Thank you.
Now,
Amen, sir. Amen.
Check this out. The biggest fertility clinic in America is located in California. We used to have them come in as expert witnesses on some matters in the show I had. And they tell me that less than 5% of their customers were married women having fertility problems. 45% of the people they had were just single females who wanted to become mothers without being bothered with being married, and 50% were lesbians.
Wow. Wow.
So there might be something in there about establishing the intentionality of the male deciding to get this woman pregnant. Did he decide that? And if not, then she's cut off. It might, shall we say, engender a little discretion when it comes down to the ladies spreading their legs. Sometimes I just wonder about it. See, one of the problems we had was when the Johnson administration back in the mid-'60s came up with safety net. It was useful then, but nowadays it is causing an environment that is causing trouble. It used to be in humanity that you had children when you could afford to take care of them or support them or raise them. And then for a span of time, it became a matter you had children to get a check so you could sustain yourself. You had a series of boyfriends who couldn't make it in the job world, so you set up matriarchies where the matrons would dispense their child support checks or their AFDC to their boyfriends, and the boyfriends would live off of them, and they would raise their boys improperly, so you got another generation who looked at that as normal. Bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So somebody needs to do something about changing that, but no one seems to want to deal with these kind of things.
And you wanna, if I could just come in for a minute on that, I'm glad you brought it there because I don't understand, why our women do that. You got a man who ain't just really worth a damn, and he ain't worth a damn, but you choose to let this man live off of you, off your riches. I mean, all because the sex is good, but then soon as he does something that you don't like, now it's a damn holocaust. And I just don't get it. So I agree with everything you just said, man, and I hope a lot of people listen to that, man. I got a young sister in her early 20s, and I hope she's listening to this. I mean, don't let no good for nothing man just lay up on you and live off of you, and try to play them mind games. Talk about if you love me, you would do this, you do that. Hell no. No, no, ma'am. No, ma'am, and I don't get this. So thank you so much for bringing it up, Judge. I don't know why women be thinking about doing that crap, and then they had to come to court and see people like you for a dispute. I don't get it, man. I don't get it. So thank you for bringing it up, brother. Thank you for bringing it up. Go ahead,
You're
brother.
welcome.
Yeah, go ahead, brother Smooth. You got anything else you want to say to him?
Yes, sir. It's like I just want to say, Judge Joe Brown, my mom and myself used to watch the show all the time before she passed away, and I've seen a few of the cases to where like it ranged from the petty until the ones that acted like they wanted to be gangster. But the only thing is, the first thing that came to my mind is you're inside of a courtroom, and it's like this ain't the time to try to act gangster. It's like your life is in somebody else's hands. So to me, it's like, I thank you for like doing the service that you do, but I'm pretty sure that sometimes it's like hard. But at the same time, though, it's like you give like really good advice, but at the same time, you have that tough love, or you're hardcore, because that's how my parents was when I was growing up. So I appreciate what you do, sir. Thank you.
So do I.
Yeah, let me say something about that. Let me say something. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me say something about that show. I was in a 15-year war with Hollywood. They don't like straight black men. I was bringing in ratings. I was tied with Judge Judy for #1 syndicated show for a while. Then they changed the way she had her ratings done, but wouldn't change me. We were all under CBS. Last 3 years, I was beating Oprah every week, Dr. Phil every week. But you see, they wanted to down me because I was a straight man who was pushing the same agenda that you hear right now. They didn't like it.
Yes.
So what they would do continuously, and I would be raising hell about it, is producers would go out there and encourage the people that came on as litigants to talk over me. And I said, if I hear you doing it again, I'm firing you. And talking about you can go fight with it somewhere else, but you're not coming up here on this set again if I hear this one more time. But see, they would tell the people, talk over, and we need to ramp it up with excitement. And I'm going, that's not what the people want. They want to see some kind of purpose and order. So they just wanted chaos. So a lot of that stuff, some of the people didn't know any better. Some of them knew better, and some of them were just that way, but got encouraged to be that way. See, I'll give you an example of what Hollywood's trying to do to you. The best case I ever had, they never aired. What it was this brother had been in the military for, 21 years, and he was in special ops, so he got wounded, and he was going to have to get out, and he decided to visit his grandmother who was living in Brooklyn. When he got there, he found all these crack dealers out on the front sidewalk, and he said he didn't put himself in harm's way for all those years for somebody to be moving poison in one of our communities. So he told everybody to get off. They wouldn't. So as he put it, the only reason he didn't kill any people was he could only buy so many bullets bootleg in New York City in a cheap .32 pistol. But he wound up doing 9 years on an attempted second-degree murder charge. So when he got out, before 9/11, he got a job removing asbestos, and he was getting paid $96 an hour. So he wasn't frivolous. He wound up getting, I think, 24 trucks and had 138 employees. And he got the contract from Dish TV to put in the antennas in downtown Manhattan, which isn't bad. Well, he got brought in because some woman was suing him, claiming that she loaned him $5,000 and he wouldn't pay her back. And also he caused her to lose her car. And he had supposedly mistreated her children. Well, when we got into it, what we found out was, yeah, he got $5,000 from her, but he put $120,000 of his own money up for an irrevocable trust for the benefit of her 3 children, so they could get to college. And she couldn't understand that. Then the other thing about mistreating her children, she said he was so wicked to her children that he wouldn't let them play their video games. He would go upstairs with them at 6:30 every evening and sit there with them for 2 hours while they did their homework, and then would sit there and check it with them rather than letting them play their video games. And then the car, it turned out, was he brought her a brand new Buick. She got all these tickets on it. So he managed to get it out on an auction, get it fixed up. Somebody that he'd done time with was running the auction. He got the car with her, and it was 44 degrees in New York on the day in question. She couldn't take a 35-minute subway ride to pick the car up, so that went south again, but it was his fault. And then we found out he paid cash for a 3-bedroom apartment for this fool downtown New York, where he prepaid 2 years worth of rent, and he was low down. He married another woman, but as he said, I tried to pay for her divorce for a long time. She'd been separated for 11 years, but she kept talking about she might miss some benefits. So I moved on, got myself a better woman. So they got mad at me because I wouldn't award a verdict to her. I said she doesn't deserve it.
She doesn't deserve it.
And I said, I'm proud of you, brother, for doing what you're doing, but they didn't want to put it on air. See, that's what they do.
Yeah.
They're some scoundrels.
Right.
That's not right.
No,
It's not right.
That's not right.
That's the classic case of give an inch and they take a mile, you know.
Yeah,
I cases like that when you're using good men.
I said the American public doesn't want to see fake; they want to see real. So I'm gonna give them real. You can go to hell with your fake.
Amen.
So it was kind of weird. I just said, fire me if you can. There's nobody high enough on the food chain in here to fire me.
Judge Joe, I got a fan here that's watching me from Facebook, and he said for me to ask you to give him a shout out. The name is Legend Red Pill. He's a fan of yours. He said, Chris, can you ask him to give me a shout out? So I'm asking, can you give Legendary Red Pill a shout out?
Shout out to who now?
Legend Red Pill.
I can't hear the name. What is it? Say it again.
Legend Red Pill. Legend Red Pill.
All right, shout out to Brother Redfield. I don't do Facebook myself.
There you go. You got it. You got it, brother.
By the way,
there you go.
You got it, brother. You got your shout out. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, brother. You do it. Go ahead.
And by the way, I do Twitter at Judge Joe Brown TV. I don't have a blue check, but that's me. It's Judge Joe Brown.
It is
TV.
him. Yeah, he's right. It is him. Cause somebody came to me and said, Chris, man, I'm concerned, man, cause he don't look like he got a big following, man. I said, I mean, everybody who's tweeting him is going to that account. So I said, hey, maybe he's not on social media big like that, So hey, probably is, but hey, I don't like to bring people false. So
I try to avoid it because it lets Big Brother get all in your business and track you.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
I agree with you.
That's true.
Exactly.
That's true.
I agree with you.
And the other thing too is, if you want to catch some of the 15 years worth of show, Bounce TV is doing reruns 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday in the mornings. If you're Memphis local, it's Xfinity or Comcast channel 906.
Absolutely.
I'm going to have to write that down.
Absolutely. Yes, and I'm going to catch
Yes,
Channel
sir.
906 Xfinity, Bounce TV. You get 2 hours a day worth of reruns.
I'm gonna have to start watching it too because I got bounced, but I just don't watch TV that much. But in support of you, brother, to keep your message out there, I definitely gonna watch because I watch you a lot.
I get residuals off of that.
Oh, okay. I'm definitely gonna support you. I'm definitely gonna support you then.
yeah, definitely because in syndication you get paid for it.
The ratings up. I get money for that.
All right, definitely. Hey, Chris, man, I got to go because I'm at work right now. But thank you, Judge Joe Brown, for taking the question, and everybody have a good night. God bless y'all.
Hey, thank you so much, brother. Thanks so much. We'll talk after the show.
All right,
I gotta check out in a little bit myself here. You got about 10 more minutes.
Oh, okay.
But can we do this again later in the week or next week or something?
It's all on you, brother. Whenever you got time, man, I would love to do a part 2.
Yeah, just call me and let me know. I'm at your service, brother.
Oh, not a problem. What times are you usually free?
About this time every night, usually.
Okay, then. Hey, not a problem, man. I'll be sure to give you a ring up, Judge Joe Brown. Man, thank you so much. This has truly been an honor. Truly been an honor.
All right.
All right. Take care.
All right, gentlemen. Appreciate
Take care,
it.
brother.
Take it easy.
Take care. The brother who